You are welcome to this edition of The Other Side. Today we are going to consider the complaints that Nigerians have been making against both the previous government, that is the government of Muhammadu Buhari, and the current government of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. The complaints have been that Buhari's government was very discriminatory. It was nepotic. It only appointed people from the regions that Buhari came from. The complaints were so strong, it was said that whenever he held a meeting of the National Security Council, the language that could be spoken at that meeting may as well have been the Hausa language. Now we've had President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who has been in government for almost 2 years. The complaints have remained that the current government is also very discriminatory and that some of the meetings of the government could actually be done in Yoruba language. For instance, the economic team is said to be mostly Yoruba. So what are the facts? Who appointed who? Where do the appointees of governments of Buhari and Tinubu come from? Of course, I've decided to throw in the government of President Goodluck Jonathan. President Goodluck Jonathan was president from 2010 to 2015, a total of 5 years. You could add, for instance, the period he spent as acting president, which may actually not count when you are discussing how long he was in power. Then President Muhammadu Buhari was in power from 2015 to 2023. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has been in power for 2 years now. The secretary to the government under President Goodluck Jonathan was Pius Anyim from Ebonyi State. Under President Muhammadu Buhari, you had 2 people, Baba Chirilawa and Boss Mustafa, both from Hong local government area of Adamawa State, both Christians. Under President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, you also have George Akume, a Christian from Benue State. President Goodluck Jonathan had as his chief of staff 2 people, the former deputy governor of Edo State, Ogeadomi from Edo State, and then you had Brigadier General Arogbofa from Ondo State, was second chief of staff to President Goodluck Jonathan. Under President Muhammadu Buhari, you had Abba Kyari from Borno State, a Kanuri man, and Ibrahim Gambari from Kwara State as chief of staff. The current chief of staff to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is former Speaker of the House of Representatives, Olufemi Gbajabiam from Lagos State. The National Security Advisor to President Goodluck Jonathan was Colonel Dasuki Sambo from Sokoto State. Buhari had Baba Mungunu from Borno State. Nuhu Ribadu from Adamawa State is the current National Security Advisor. The Chief of Defense Staff to President Goodluck Jonathan were 2. He had Admiral Ola Ibrahim from Kwara State. He was the first Chief of Defense Staff, and then he was followed by Air Marshal Alex Bade from Adamawa State, from Mobi in Adamawa State, as the Chief of Defense Staff. And then Muhammadu Buhari had 2, both from the south. Abayomi Olanishokan from Ekiti State was the first Chief of Defense Staff. He was followed by Loki Irabo from Delta State, South, who was also the Chief of Defense Staff. And the current Chief of Defense Staff for President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is General Christopher Gwaben Musa from Kaduna State. In terms of the Chief of Army Staff, President Goodluck Jonathan had Major General Azubuike Jirika from Abia State, Southeast, the first Igbo man since the Civil War, who became the Chief of Army Staff. The second person was General Kenneth Minima from Rivers State. Buhari appointed Tukur Buratai from Borno State as his Chief of Army Staff. He was followed by Atahiru Ibrahim from Kano State. Atahiru did not last long, and then you had another person also from the Northwest taking over as the Chief of Army Staff. President Tinubu has had 2 Chief of Army Staff. The first one, Taurid Lagbaja from Osun State, Southwest. The second one, Olufemi Oluyede, Ekiti State from Southwest. And then we had the Chief of Air Staff. Bade was Chief of Air Staff under Jonathan. And then you had AVM Adeshola Amosun from Lagos State as the second Chief of Air Staff. President Muhammadu Buhari had Sadiq Abubakar from Bauchi State as his Chief of Air Staff, and Isiaka Amao from Osun State as his Chief of Air Staff, the second Chief of Air Staff. And currently, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has Hassan Abubakar from Kano as his chief of air staff. The chief of naval staff under President Goodluck Jonathan were two. You had AVM Dele Ezoba from Delta State, and then Rear Admiral Jibril from Kogi State. Buhari had Ibok Ete Ibas from Cross Rivers and Awal Gambo from Kano. And presently, the Chief of Naval Staff is Manuel Ogala from Enugu Southeast. The position of Inspector General of Police, President Goodluck Jonathan had Hafiz Ringim from Jigawa and Mohammed Diko Abubakar from Zamfara. President Muhammadu Buhari had Ibrahim Idris, Mohammed Adamu from Nasarawa, and Usman Al-Khali from Yobe. And presently, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has Kayode from Ogun State as his Inspector General of Police. The position of the Director of State Security Service under President Goodluck Jonathan was Ekwenyong from Cross River State. Buhari had Lawal Dawara from Katsina and Yusuf Bichi from Kano. Yusuf Bichi also worked with President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and the new DG is Ajayi from Osun State. The Customs DG under President Goodluck Jonathan was Diko Indi Abdullahi from Katsina, and then Muhammadu Buhari brought in a military officer, Colonel Hamid Ali from Bauchi State, who held the position throughout the period that he was president. And the current appointee is Bashir from Osun State. The immigration under President Goodluck Jonathan, Rose Uzoma from Abia State as DG, and the late David Paradang from Plateau also served as the CG. Under President Muhammadu Buhari, we had Kure Abeshi from Benue and Muhammad Babandede from Jigawa State. The current person is Kemi Namdab, wife of late Colonel Namdab from Plateau State, but she hails from the southwest. The civil defense under President Goodluck Jonathan had Bolorin from the southwest. Under President Muhammadu Buhari, it was Ahmed Abu Nasarawa, and currently, I think it is still Odi from Nasarawa State. The prisons or correctional service under President Goodluck Jonathan was headed by Peter Ekwendu, Imo Southeast. Under President Muhammadu Buhari, there were two people, Ahmed Ja'afaru from Kebbi and Haliru Nababa from Sokoto Northwest. And currently, the appointee of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is Sylvester Ndidi Nwakuche from Southeast. The fire service under Jonathan, of course, was Joseph Anebi from the North Central. The EFCC under President Goodluck Jonathan had Farida Waziri from Benue, Ibrahim Lamude from Adamawa. Under President Muhammadu Buhari, it was Ibrahim Magu, Borno State, Abdurrashid Bawa from Kebbi State, and presently under President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, it is Olaniku from Ekiti State. The ICPC chairman under President Goodluck Jonathan was Nta from Akwa Ibom State. Under President Muhammadu Buhari, it was Bolaji Owosandoni. Currently, it is under President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. We have Musa Adamu Aliu Jigawa. The CBN under President Goodluck Jonathan had Sanusi Lamido, who resigned to become the Emir of Kano under very controversial circumstances after leveling salacious allegations against President Goodluck Jonathan, who then appointed Godwin Emefiele from Delta State in the South as the replacement. President Muhammadu Buhari retained Godwin Emefiele throughout his period, and the current appointee is Yemi Kadoso from Lagos Southwest. The Federal Inland Revenue Service under Goodluck Jonathan was first Kabiru Mashi from Katsina, but under President Muhammadu Buhari, you had Babatunde Fowler, Lagos, and Mohammed Nami from Niger State. Currently, Zach Adedeji from Oyo State is the chairman. The NNPC GMD had Andrew Yakubu from Kaduna State, Northwest, and then also had Joseph Dawa from Borno State. And then under President Muhammadu Buhari, you had Ibe Kachuku from Delta State, Mekanti Baru from Bauchi State, and the latest one, Mele Kyari from Borno State. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu inherited him and replaced him with Bayo from Kwara State, also a Yoruba man. In the NPA, the President Jonathan had Habibu Abdullahi from Kano. Buhari had Hadiza Bala Usman from Katsina, his home state. And then Nimasa, we had President Goodluck Jonathan appointed Zakedi Patri Pobolokeme from Bayelsa. Buhari appointed Dakuku Peterside, who was removed and replaced by Bashir Jamo from the northwest. And then you had Dayo Moberola from the southwest as the DG. Well, that is the rundown. The data is not complete, but as you can see from the data, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and President Muhammadu Buhari are competing for the positions of being the most nepotic when you put these three leaders together. President Ibele Goodluck Jonathan is miles away from them, appears from the data available to have been more patriotic and run a more inclusive government than both persons that succeeded him. But the question to ask, why do leaders have to be nepotic people? The first one is that, in my opinion, we are born into a society, an environment where we trust ourselves first, we trust our fellow members, and we trust those around us. That is how man evolved historically. So culturally, it is easier to relate with people that you know than people that you don't know. And then the second point is that leaders often surround themselves with family, ethnic, or religious group because they perceive those people to be more trustworthy and very less likely to betray them. And in countries where institutions are not strong, loyalty is valued above competence. And of course, it is also important to know that in our environment, nepotism has not been part of corruption. They see it as a duty to take care of one's own. Third, where institutions are fragile, leaders usually depend on family, on personal networks of family, clan, tribe, or religion to govern. This, of course, naturally erodes merit and fuels discriminations against outsiders. And of course, related to that is that it is a survival strategy. And it is believed that if you promote relatives or loyalists, you create a protective cycle around yourself against people who may not want you. Another way that is looked at is that by favoring your own group, you will grow leaders, people that will take over from you, people that will consolidate what you are doing. You now have a political structure or an institution that you can keep for life that will keep protecting you and so forth. Nepotism is just part of greed and corruption, because nepotism serves as a mechanism for capture of resources. Ruling families or friends dominate the wealth and processes and appointments and exclude others. But this, of course, creates problems by itself. The first thing that this does is that it does create an erosion of merit, and people who have merit, people who are efficient, will not have a place. Today, if you check the Congress of the United States or even some state governments, the people who are ruling in those as mayors or as governors or as members of Congress, a lot of them are from Africa, a lot of them are from other parts of the world, because the system in the United States allows people to grow. Your limit is dependent on you and what you are able to do. Barack Obama, born to a woman outside wedlock, became president of the United States because the system is an inclusive system that allows people to rise. When you have a system that is like that, that system opens itself up to have innovators come in, or people can innovate, because what stands between them and success will be their ability and the innovations they have, and not because of who they know or who they do not know. Countries which leverage on nepotism, on leaders being everything, deciding who should be there and who should not be there, are usually become very weak, and they usually get destroyed very tragically. Of course, another point is that there's no public trust in government. Citizens and excluded groups may perceive government as unfair. These feelings of disunity, grievances, and sometimes violent conflicts. And these violent conflicts always follow governments and systems that are nepotic. Thirdly, you have this system of nepotism creates, entrenches corruptions and patronage and prevents institutions from functioning impartially and properly, including the military. Of course, it is public knowledge that one of the reasons the Great Britain lost the independence war in the US was because its military was based on patronage. Powerful and wealthy people in England paid for their sons to become captains or commanders. The army, of course, could not withstand those that came to fight believing in what they were fighting for. Everywhere in the world it has been proven all through history that systems that are based on nepotic approaches actually function improperly. And of course, the people that have the talents and have the ability are wasted when it comes to this type of situation, which is one of the reasons why you have called brain drain. Some of the brightest people move out of those climes because in those climes they have no future. And then you have a system where the corrupt people and the corruption that comes from a captured system widens inequality. And like I said, it sows the seeds for violence or future violence. And generally, of course, those systems become very politically unstable. You hear people talking about favoritism, people talking rebellions as secessionist movements, and marginalized groups will begin to fight back. And there are examples in history where these things have happened. If you take the case of Syria, the Assad family, the Hafiz Assad passed power to his son Bashar in 2000. Key positions remain controlled by the family members and the minority sect. What was the outcome? The regime was unstable for years. We had ISIL take over swaths of the territories, and it got to a stage that the people were simply driven out. Of course, Saddam would not have been easily overthrown had he created an inclusive system. When you don't have an inclusive system, you open the room for people within the system to look for people from outside that will help them, and the result is instability and destruction. So what is your take about the complaints that people are giving about the partiality of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu? What do you say about the statistics? Are there statistics that prove that these allegations are not so? We want to have your take. Just send us your views. Go to our chat room and post correct information if the information we have is not updated or is not correct. My name is Rimamnde Shawulu. This is The Other Side.